Hi, I'm John Schol, a bishop in the United Methodist Church serving the greater New Jersey area. It's great to be with you today, and today I'm actually recording this message from our new office, our new Mission and Resource Center for the Greater New Jersey Conference. And we're hosting a dedication on April 15th. And I invite all of you to come and join us for that dedication. It's going to be a grand day. You'll get to tour and see the new building and see some of the resources. And also see the new video center that is just being finished up now that I'll be broadcasting from in the future. So it's great to be with you, and I give thanks to God for you and give thanks to God for this new Mission and Resource Center. You know, I've built a number of buildings over the years, and I'll never forget when I was in a local church, we had this major building project. We had to be out of the church for a while, and we were ready to move back in and have the dedication service on a Sunday morning, and a couple asked if they could be married the Saturday before the grand opening. And we talked about it, and we said, what a wonderful way to restart our ministry in the building, but to have a wedding. And so we said, sure. And so that Saturday, the couple came, and the family, and the bridesmaids, the groomsmen, they were all there. And so my tradition was I would go and pray with the groom, and then I would go and pray with the bride. And as I was going, I was walking down this hallway, and I took a shortcut through a Sunday school room. And as I came into the Sunday school room, there was a young boy. He was probably maybe 6, 7 years old. And there he was, and he just had his hands all over the wall, and he was touching the wall. And I said to myself, hey, you know, don't do that. This is a brand new space. We've just painted it. That's brand new paint. I mean, for goodness sake, maybe the child had chocolate that morning or something. And I was just afraid of handprints getting on the wall. And he was just tapping the wall. And I remember saying to myself, you know, all these different things, and you know, don't go there. So, you know, just stop that. And just as I was getting ready to say something, he reached the door. And he felt for the doorknob, and he found the doorknob, and he turned it and opened the door. And at that point, I realized he was blind, that he couldn't see. And he was just trying to find his way to the door, to open the door so that he could go out. You know, we're going to begin a new series about don't go there. And often we make judgments about things because we just see what we see at the moment without fully understanding what's behind it. And we're going to talk about what it means for the church to go there in some very difficult and hard conversations. Things that we often steer away from in the church, like sex and addiction, doubt, family challenges, divorce. We're going to talk about some of these really hard issues. You know, issues that have happened in my extended family life. And I imagine, you know, some of these issues have happened in your family extended life. And we often wonder, what do we do in a situation like that? What do we say? How can we be of help? And that's what we're going to talk about. How do we help people in the midst of challenging situations where often people just don't want to go there, and particularly the church doesn't want to go there and talk about these things? Well, this sermon series, we're going to go there. Now, Paul says in the passage that we heard today about carrying one another's burdens. And you know, many of the things that we're going to talk about feel very burdensome. They really weigh us down. And that's why we're going to talk about how do we go there in a way that helps to carry one another's burdens. And also we want to use this series as a resource to help you carry your own burdens and some of the challenges you find in life as well. Now, burdens are not easy to carry. And making decisions in these difficult challenges are not easy as well. I served a church one time where there was this faithful family. They, a husband and wife, they had older children. They were grown and married, but they were a family that was beloved by the congregation. And one day I got a call that the husband murdered his wife. I was shocked. I was just shocked. And we began to gather people from the church, and we were all shocked, and we began to ask questions, important questions. Why did this happen? How did this happen? What is it that we can do? Sure, we can pray, and we certainly did pray. Yes, we can reach out to the family and share our sympathy and our concern. But what could we really do to carry the burdens for this family? How are we going to support the children in what was a horrible situation for them? What were we going to do about the husband who killed his wife? He was mentally ill. And what does it mean for us to carry the burdens of other people in the midst of these kinds of challenges? Yes, there are not easy answers. These are challenges that we face that just move us to the very core of our own being in questioning, what is it that I can do? Well, as I said, Paul talks about carrying one another's burdens. Sometimes we ask, why did these things happen? You know, in the passage today, we heard about temptation, and certainly temptation is a part of what happens in life when things don't go the way we want them to, when we find ourselves with these challenges that we just don't want to go there. And yes, we're going to talk about temptation during this series. But I don't want to say it's only temptation. I mean, mental illness is not about temptation. Even sometimes addiction is not about temptation. You know, we can watch in families when there's alcoholism that goes from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. It's systemic. There are issues of poverty and other kinds of issues that are just systemic. I know there have been people who have been abused in their life, physically, sexually, and then they act out and they do things, but they're really trying to respond to this abuse that happened to them when they were younger or as a child, and trying to figure out, how do I live my life carrying this burden? And so it's not all about temptation. There are many complex things. You know, Jesus, after he was baptized, he went into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, and it says he was tempted for 40 days and for 40 nights. And another way to translate that word temptation is tested. And that's really what I want to say, that many of these challenges we face really put us to a test. They just get to us in a way that's really pushing us to our very limits, and seeing what the limits, the test is for our limits. And so testing is maybe a better way to look at some of these things. Now in life, there are easy tests, there are challenging tests, there are all kinds of tests. I remember when I was in college, I took a biology course my sophomore year, and it was a large class, and there were a number of football players in the class. I played on the football team, and we had heard about Dr. Gaumer and his tests, and we heard his tests were very hard, that there were generally over 100 questions on the test that you had to answer. Now, you know, science is generally a difficult subject for many people, and to have 100 questions on a test can be a real challenge. Well, I remember we were coming up to the midterm test, and the football team got together, the football players in the class got together to study. Now, I wouldn't always recommend getting football players together to form a study group, but we did. We were going to give it a whirl. We wanted to do well in this biology class, and so we got together and we began to study, and we studied the book, we studied our notes, and one of our friends on the football team said, you know, my roommate took biology last year, and he has the tests from Dr. Gaumer. We said, oh, that would be great. We could actually get to see what kind of test he gives and what they're like. And sure enough, he brought the test, and the midterm test from the previous year had 114 questions. Oh, I just gulped. Holy smokes. Well, we looked over the test. We studied the questions on that test. We continued to study our notes, our textbook, and we did the best preparation we could for that biology test. Well, we went in and we sat down, and Dr. Galmer began to pass out the test, and they were these thick tests. And sure enough, 114 questions. Well, I looked at the tests and I began to read the questions, and all of a sudden I realized it was the same test from the previous year that we had been studying. I knew all of the answers. Now, I didn't want to look suspicious, so I on purpose got 8 of the questions wrong. I mean, it would still be an A, but I didn't want to make it look like that I had cheated or that somehow I knew all the answers ahead. Now, when I got out of class, I connected with my other friends, and we all looked at each other. We just couldn't believe it. And another person, one of the other players said, well, I got 4 wrong on purpose. Another one said, I got them all right. We looked at him like, why did you do that? And one of the players, a defensive lineman, said, I got enough wrong to get a B. We said, a B? He said, yeah, it'll be the only B I get this semester. Well, we laughed and we talked about it and went back to the dorm, and then we began to think, you know, what should we do about this? You see, the real test was now unfolding for us. What were we going to do? I mean, we knew all the answers. Was it cheating? Was it the wrong thing to do? We talked about it and talked about it, and finally we decided as a group that we would go back and talk to Dr. Galmer and explain to him everything and what had happened. But the player who got a B protested. He said, this is the only B I'm going to get this semester. And we said, no, we need to do this. So we went back and we talked to Dr. Galmer and told him everything that happened. And he said, well, I commend you for forming a study group. And he said, I commend you for your creativity and looking at previous tests. He said, I'm going to let you keep your grades. To which the football player who got a B began to protest and said, I could have gotten an A. And Dr. Galmer said, well, just be happy. It's the only B you're going to get this semester. You know, the real test was, what were we going to do in life? You know, sometimes tests are easy. Sometimes tests are really challenging. Sometimes we really don't need any help with a test. We can figure it all out and get it done. And other times the tests in life are so challenging, we just can't do it on our own. You know, one of the reasons it's hard for people to talk about these things in church is because, well, they're embarrassing or they're challenging. I get that, I understand it. But another reason is that people are always afraid in church, if they share with somebody else about what's going on in life, they'll be judged about that. Their family will be judged. They'll be judged. How could you let your kids do that? Or how did you raise your kids? And so we judge people. And so the first principle today in being able to go there and help carry one another's burdens and talk about these important issues in life is not to judge. You know, Jesus didn't judge people. He welcomed them out of a tree, a sycamore tree, and invited them to have dinner together. He met with a woman who he knew all about her life and how she had been sleeping with other men, and yet he accepted her just as she was and helped her to become somebody else. You know, when we judge, it's a non-starter. It stops the conversation. It doesn't allow a person to go deeper with their angst and with their challenges and with what's going on in their life. And so, in order to be able to go there and to talk about these things, the first thing for us is not to judge people, but to accept them just as they are and to begin to work with them so that they can begin to get the kind of help they need to move on in life. I want our fingerprints to be all over helping one another. I want our fingerprints to be out in the world helping people with their greatest challenges. I want our fingerprints to become the grace of God as we work with one another. It's not easy. Some tests are very hard. You know, each and every day you are faced with a test. When somebody comes to you and pours out their heart, pours out their soul, the test is really yours. What are you going to do with this information? How are you going to care about them? Are you going to have fingerprints of grace or fingerprints of judgment? Are you going to work with them in a way that just helps to unburden them? Or are you going to add more burdens to their life? Let us be a graceful people in the midst of challenging issues. And let us all work together to go there and help God's grace abound. Amen.